Well, welcome to Livestock, our podcast brought to you by the University of Tennessee Beef and Forage Center. I'm Bruno Pedreira, Center Director and UT Extension Forage Specialist, and I'm joined today with Dr. Katie Mason here, our UT Extension Beef Specialist. How are you doing today, Katie Mason?
Hey, I'm good. I'm glad to be away from the snow and here in Kissimmee, Florida at the AFGC meeting.
That's true. We are here this week in Florida. Spend a lot of time with our forage folks all across the country, and we couldn't miss that chance to talk a little bit with Dr. Rocky Lemus, our forage extension specialist here with Mississippi State University, also a producer in Mississippi. So, Rocky, thank you so much for finding time in this crazy schedule we're having here this week, right? And talk with us a little bit.
Thank you, Bruno and Katie, for the opportunity to be with you guys. I think this is always a treat to be able to share with my colleagues across the South some of the experience that I have as a forest specialist in Mississippi, but also as a producer. So
excellent, excellent. So let's start with this. Could you share a little bit of your personal and academic journey up to be here? How you end up as a producer in Mississippi as well?
Yeah, I've been at Mississippi State for about 17 years right now in the role as a extension forest specialist. I work with basically small ruminants, but also with beef cattle producers in my main enterprise in Mississippi. But with that, I focus on developing sustainable grazing management systems that they can implement at farms. So a lot of time on the road, but also we develop a lot of basic research projects that try to answer questions to some of the needs that the producers have in the state, but also across the South. And another thing that we try to do as a producer, I'm a dairy goat producer, so our farm is located in Tupelo, Mississippi, called Rich Farms. Our main goal is the production of soft cheeses and also aged cheeses. So it's been an adventure and working with the dairy goat industry. My main focus on the herd is Nubian dairy goats, but also we have a couple of La Mancha goats that we have included in our operation.
Very good. Yeah. So one of the questions that I get, I'm work with beef producers mostly, but we have a lot of folks moving into Tennessee and wanting to get started with livestock. And it seems like a lot of times they choose small ruminants to do that instead of, if they don't have enough land to support cattle. And so tell us a little bit about setting up, or getting started with small ruminants in terms of grazing management.
I think it's something that is very important, especially as small producers that are looking at 1 or 2 or 3 acres. One thing is be able to determine what you have on your farm first. I think there is a misconception out there that a small ruminant, especially goats, can't eat anything. and that's something that probably is gonna set up the producer for failure. So it's very important the producer be able to identify what species they have on the land, and then be able to work with the local county extension office to hopefully collect soil samples, determine what the fertility is, and be able then introduce a diverse grazing system. One of the advantages of having a diverse grazing system is allow them to have grazing year round that will help minimize any type of supplementation that they do. But also we need to address the issues that in the South, we have a lot of parasite issues. And most of those parasite issues we see when there is very little grazing management approach on that. The animals are going to be in one pasture. They're going to be going to that pasture every day. So the opportunity for those small ruminants, either sheep and goat, to have contact with parasite really increases. If we look at the parasite cycle, it's about 21 days. So you're going to have some type of rotational grazing system that will help to break that cycle throughout the season.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point, Rocky. And I think it brings us back to the planning, right? To understand the whole farm, understand what you have there and how you can manage to put all of them together. I also wanted you to talk a little bit. Most of the guys that we have discussion that they have some small ruminants, they don't only have small ruminants, they also have cattle, right? How do you balance this? How do you see those farmers that they already have cattle and they want to add sheep and goats to that conversation? And some of them also have the expectation that especially the goats that with their browse behavior that they have, they will graze things or eat brown things that cattle will never touch, right? What are the benefits of putting them together, and what are the things that a farmer needs to consider when he takes this route?
I think that's a good question, and I think that's a good opportunity to integrate a mixed grazing system where uh, either goat or sheep can be integrated with cattle. One of the advantages of that system, if we think about the grazing behavior, sheep are going to be more we call top grazer. They're going to nib the top of the plants because it's going to be more nutritious for them, and they're going to move on. And then behind that, the cattle will be able to actually graze those. The only one thing that you need to think about when doing this is selecting species that are going to have more of that upright growth, where you're going to limit how that grazing system of at least 3 or 4 inches, so that parasite doesn't move so far into the system that you're going to have that opportunity for infestation. So with goats, it's a little bit different. With goats, they're gonna be a little bit of browser, and depending what kind of browsing do you have, there are also we need to be careful when browsing because there are species out there that could be toxic to some of the small ruminants. So, and there is also at one point there's gonna be a limitation on browsing because goats are gonna be able to graze to a specific height. And once all the plants are depleted at a specific height, they're going to rely more on grazing management. So having that relationship between sheep and goat might be something that is beneficial. Sometimes you can have both commingling in the same pastures, or you might have a situation or a rotation where the sheep and the goat are going to go ahead of the cattle, be able to get that nutritious forage earlier, and then bring the cattle behind. That's another option that producer can have, and that's what's going to depend on actually how much land you have available to do so.
Kind of first and last grazing.
That's correct. You're looking at stocking rates. You're looking at 1 cow and about 6 to 8 sheep or goat in that system. So depending on how well your forage are established in that system.
Yeah, that stocking rate part is really important, especially, these folks that have a small area of land. It's, not the same as putting 1 cow on there versus, like you said, several small ruminants. But thinking about these grazing systems and the forage species that go in there, can you tell us a little bit about how you're building that system to have, close to year-round grazing, and maybe what some of the specific grass species and legume species as well that you might use?
There is a large diversity of forage species and legume species that can be incorporated into small ruminant grazing system. And most of them are the same species that we see that we use in big cattle operations. For you guys in Tennessee, tall fescue is probably going to be a good base.
Debate, yeah.
For me being in North Mississippi, I had the opportunity to utilize tall fescue, and I utilize tall fescue to my advantage because I can use those for high quality nutrition and grazing early in the spring when my dairy goats are already kidding. They're going to be in high milk production, and most of those tall fescue can have a mix of red clover and white clover there that really enhancing the nutritive value that my goats are getting into the system. As you move into the summer, we get into July, June, you have that decline in tall fescue productivity because of the heat and humidity. But we had the opportunity in Mississippi, for example, to incorporate Bahia grass. I prefer Bahia grass over Bermuda grass because of the upright growth. To avoid the issue with parasites, but also we can incorporate a lot of the summer annuals. Pearl millet is one of my favorite, and the reason for that is because pearl millet doesn't grow very tall; it's very leafy. So sheep and goat are going to get better nutrition, better utilization of that system, where there's going to be less trampling. One of the advantages that you can do with that too is that you can incorporate, if you're in Tennessee, probably you can incorporate some hemp. We cannot do that in Mississippi, but there is opportunity to incorporate also cowpeas or forage soybeans, depending on what is available in the market at a time. So you can really build a good supplemental protein bank to maintain those animals in the summertime and create a rotation in that. And sometimes doesn't mean that you have to go and plant 10 acres, so that you might, if you're doing a good rotation and you have half-acre paddocks, you might be able to put a couple of them in different species that have a species diversity in there. Sure. The other thing is, going back then in the fall, you have the opportunity to stockpile fescue. And
Yeah.
in my system, up to a week ago, before we get the snow, the goats were grazing and stockpiling fescue, and it was a good opportunity for us to extend that grazing season. And in other areas, then we're incorporating cool season grasses. I like to use ryegrass or oats or triticale in that system, and then supplemented with a low bloating potential legume like a Bersin clover, balanza clover, to really give that opportunity to the goats to utilize and the sheep to utilize as much as they can.
Mm-hmm.
So, Rocky, thinking that we are in the middle of the tall fescue belt, right? The summer is always a challenge. What do you envision as a good way to make through the summer? We were discussing with some of our producers, and last year, for example, I have a few of them feeding hay in July, right? Because they were relying only in fescue. In a system, not only for sheep and goat, but in the forage system like this, if you were going to bring sheep and goats for your livestock operation, what kind of summer animals would you like to have there to complement, especially June, July, and August?
Crabgrass is one that I think does very well for us.
Okay.
And one of the advantages that I like about crabgrass is you plant crabgrass and you let it reseed at least once in that establishing year. That crabgrass keep coming back into your pastures every year. So very highly nutrition. We're talking about crude protein, about 14, 16%. We're close to 60% TDNs or energy in the system. So it really produces quite a bit that helps you maintain those animals in that period where it's more droughty.
Okay. Yeah.
With you being from Brazil, I've been doing some work at my farm and at Mississippi State looking at brachyrias because they do very well for us as an annual crop. I'm probably not going to be a perennial.
No.
I think one of the limitations that we have is the seed cost as an annual, but the productivity that they have all the way from July into November before we get a killing frost is phenomenal. So it allows us to really extend that grazing season. And in those brachyrias, I see they're very leafy. So the more leafy material you have for a small ruminant, probably the most benefit you're going to get out of that system.
Yeah. So, excuse me, I'm going to pause. So thinking about just a little bit about animal nutrition, we won't get too much into the weeds, no pun intended on this, but thinking about nutrition, especially in these mixed grazing systems, if you had to rank nutrient requirements for like cattle, sheep, and goats in terms of, just overall energy and protein, what does that look like? And I know it's different based on stage of production, but what does that look like?
If I had to rank them, sheep is going to be at the top, and probably dairy goats are going to be following that, and then meat goats following that, and then cattle. And the reason that is because you're dealing with small animals, so their metabolism is going to be a little bit faster. They're going to require a little bit more energy to maintain that body condition, and so you're going to see that. That's the reason why we recommend usually to have the small ruminant to graze earlier ahead of the cattle, so they can get that nutrition, and the cattle can actually sustain still good production with a little bit less nutrition. We're looking at for example, dairy goat and peak lactation, you're looking at 14-16% crude protein to actually maintain that milk production. So it's something that we try to concentrate quite a bit on.
Sure.
And that's the reason we try to incorporate legumes and forbs and all of these other plants that we will mention here could be really great. Right?
That's correct. Having a biodiversity of different foliage, and doesn't mean that you have to go and plant 18 species in one place. But to me, I think the biodiversity is more about having different species at one or three mixes, or maybe a monoculture 1 or 3 or 4 species in different paddocks, where you can rotate them and give them the opportunity to actually utilize those much better.
Let's talk on the rotation a little bit. You already mentioned the issue with parasites in small ruminants, right? I think that's our main challenge when we are moving towards small ruminants. And I can tell you, I started my career with small ruminants. I never thought I would come back on that subject again, but here I am 20 years later. It is a big issue. On the pasture base, you already mentioned from 21, 20-day cycle. How important it is to, if you are getting into this small ruminant business, to have a good grazing management plan for your whole year?
It is very important. Parasite could be very detrimental to your herd. Body score conditions, health issues, vet bills. So, starting from the beginning with a good grazing management system is something that is gonna really dictate the long-term sustainability of your farm with a small ruminant, either if you are dairy goats, your sheep, or meat goats. Especially if you're a meat goat, you're gonna depend quite a bit on body score condition gaining to go to market. So healthy animals and having healthy pastures is gonna really take you to that level.
Mhm. Yeah, so I think that, that starts to wrap us up here. We've kind of touched on grazing management, we've touched on forages and what we might need as far as nutrient requirements and parasite loads. And so I think that gives us a good overview of what that small ruminant system might look like and some differences in how we manage compared to cattle.
Any other comments before we wrap up here? What are we missing in sheep and goats that you'd like to share with our producers in Tennessee?
I think it was something that's very important that when you also thinking about going into small ruminants, is selecting a species that will fit into your environment. There's a lot of different species of dairy goat. There's different species of meat goats out there. Contact your county extension office, work with them to identify which species might fit better into your operation and your location before you make that final decision of what implementation and management I need to be developing.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Rocky, again, very, very happy to be here with Dr. Lemus, Mississippi State University Forage Extension Specialist with us. Thanks for putting time with us to record this podcast. It was really great to talk to you.
Oh, thank you so much for the invitation.
Well, hope you guys enjoy to be here with us. And next month, we will have another podcast. Hope to see you all here.